Welcome to Small Talk by Sfarim Chatter. I'm Nachi Weinstein. On this episode of Small Talk, I'm going to be joined by Sina Kahen, who is the founder of .press, the co-founder of the Chabura, and he's an innovator and manager in AI and technology, and he's the author of the book that we'll be discussing on this episode called Ideas. Currently, there's 2 volumes out, one on Bereshis and one on Shemos. We're going to be talking about the one on Shemos, and he's edited a number of other volumes as well. So thank you, Sina, for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Nafi.
So what can you tell the listeners about this book and its uniqueness, really, Ideas?
So the book is really a series of essays on the weekly Torah portion that explores and I think hopefully manifests a central idea that you'll see throughout the book, which is the author of the Torah is the author of the world. And as a result of that maxim, if you like, Torah study should be integrated with the best knowledge that the world has to offer. And this perspective, which is a very old perspective, teaches that whether it's science, philosophy, worldly wisdoms, these aren't necessarily threats to Torah, but they can actually serve as tools to deepen our understanding of it and ultimately achieve what is the objective of every Jew, which is Da'at Hashem. And the context of it really comes from, as an Iranian-born Sephardi growing up in a predominantly Ashkenazi society of the UK, my family and siblings noticed that there was some sort of divide between religious knowledge and secular knowledge, which we sensed was very much an artificial distinction. And I mentioned in the book, Hacham Yisrael Moshe Chazan, who was a chief rabbi both in Egypt and in Italy, he famously said that the separation of religion and science is a Western characteristic and a mortal sickness. So what I try to do in my book is draw inspiration from Hachamim in this tradition that have existed really throughout the generations, from Chazal, Saadia Gaon, Harambam, Rav Polkar, Hacham Ben Amozeg, Hacham Nieto, Hacham Ben Sion Uziel, Mori Kafech, Hacham Faur, and many Hachamim, both Ashkenazi and Sephardi, who have really upheld this tradition of, Kabel Ha'emet Mimi Shamra. And, something really unique about these Hachamim that I try to bring out in the book is that it wasn't, this integration of worldly knowledge wasn't about sounding smart or modern at a Shabbat dinner table. It wasn't even about knowing the latest developments because it's good for Parnassah or it allows you to be part of society or any other modern idea. It was because they genuinely held that Da'at Hashem requires of us to utilize our intellect to its limits in order to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu and His Torah. They really saw it as a religious obligation, part of Talmud Torah, not something that was at the expense of Talmud Torah. So with this approach at hand, I guess the book tries to provide some clarity, address some misconceptions when it comes to concepts and ideas in Jewish thought, but it does this by using certain pesukim of each parasha in Sefer Shemot as a kind of trigger or a springboard to, explore that idea. And Sefer Shemot is really a treasure trove of ideas and concepts for Judaism, seeing how we developed in Bereshit from, an independent family to all the way to where we're a fledgling nation in Sefer Shemot. There's a lot to learn about the Jewish perspective on life, and I try to present some answers in this book.
So if you could explain a little bit how the book works, because it's like I mentioned at the beginning, it's a little unique, it's a little different. It's about 150 pages, not a massive book. There's a short introduction, and then you get into each parasha. So how does it work? Give the listener an understanding of each parasha, of what you do, and how you kind of blend these ideas with different quotations of different authors and different Sfarim, and it's all in English, by the way, right?
Yes, correct, indeed. So really the book begins, if we look at the spine of it, the book begins with, there's an introductory chapter, and that presents what I argue are the major obstacles in our attempt to reach Da'at Hashem. So whether it's superficial understandings of Torah and Mitzvot, a recent lust for literalism, or, superstitious isolationism. Things that, although are quite primal, and many Hachamim have dealt with it for many generations, I think have been exasperated by being in Galut for so long. So some have called that first chapter a polemic, others have called it a recalibration. The second introductory chapter really presents, again, what I argue is the historical development of the two major schools of Jewish thought that emerged primarily from the formative Sephardi and Ashkenazi traditions, and the controversies that emerged. I specifically focus on a controversy with regards to Rav Yaakov Anatoli and Malmad Talmidim. But I basically present some of those controversies that were trying to deal with this, central question of understanding Torah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu by examining God's other fingerprints, such as science, philosophy, and beyond. Now, after those two kind of contextual introductions, the book then goes into an essay on each sidra in Sefer Shemot. And each essay begins with, like a key observation from the parasha at hand. And it starts exploring that observation through Jewish sources. That's kind of like the root, the ikar, and sources, as I say, from Jews throughout the generations. But then I try to support those ideas and those observations with many quotes and ideas from many fields and disciplines, whether it's science, philosophy, my own fields of AI and technology, design, art, etc., etc. And I constantly had in the back of my mind a quote from, I argue, one of the greatest minds of our generation, Alav Shalom Hacham Yosef Faur, who said that Naschiyut HaTorah, which is, the eternity of the Torah, is not just a dogma. It's not something that we just confess as kind of like a fiat of faith. He says it's a demand, a challenge to present very old ideas of Judaism in the contemporary language of our time. So that's really what I try to do with each essay, bringing in a whole variety of sources to support ultimately what is the eternal Torah.
You mentioned Rabbi Yaakov Anatoli. For those that aren't familiar, so he is a Rishon. He dies around 1256. He's originally from South France, and he was related to the Ibn Tibbons, and he ends up in Naples. He translates many works of philosophy, Aristotle. So Maimonides Talmidim, it was his work on Chumash. He was a real Maimonidean, so rationalizing everything in that sense. And this book was only published, I believe, by Mekitzer Damim in 19th century, I think, and there was controversy around him, as Sina said, for many of those that were of the extreme Maimonidean bent. So this book, is there, you mentioned the essay, is there a narrative theme running through, first of all, each parsha, because you quote, essentially the way it works is, and anyone who opens the book, anyone who has the book will see this, you quote, you do little quotes, you write, there's standard text, which is you speaking, then there is italicized text, which is a quotation, and then right after the italicized text, off towards the side, in the regular font again, in the little different font, it has the name of who you're quoting, and so you that's how it works throughout the essay. So each parsha, first of all, is there a narrative theme in each parsha? And then is there a narrative theme to the book as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, you've described it very well in the sense that you've essentially got punctuated, the essay's punctuated with these various quotes from various places as though everybody's involved in the same conversation. And that conversation is really based on that narrative theme, which I think there's three if I was to reduce the whole book, or the narrative theme of the whole book into three components. It's first and foremost the importance of Berit, the importance of covenant in all that we do, and the human responsibility to nurture that relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The second element, I would say, or the second element of that narrative theme really is to encourage really deep intellectual and experiential engagement with Torah and Judaism, without resorting to superstitious and other similar, shortcuts that one can have in any relationship, let alone one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And again, emphasizing that, as we are emerging from this, unique individual family in Sefer Bereshit and now coming into this fledgling nation, a lot changes. And how the Torah presents that change as we are maturing, I think is lessons that aren't just for the time, but as we mentioned earlier with the eternity of the Torah, it is very relevant to today. And I try to kind of extract some of those in every single essay.
So, like I said, throughout each essay, throughout each parsha, you have listed who you're quoting, and then at the end, kind of the last page of each parsha, there's a list of the references of the quotations of who was quoted and where you can access them. The sources used, how did you select them? How did you go about choosing who you decided to quote? Or was there a methodology, or is it just, it came to be?
Yeah. So, do you know those little not bookmarks, but you can get those stickers that are different colors,
Yeah, the
right?
post-it, the little post-it notes, the flags, kind of.
Exactly right. So ever since, my undergrad was in biomedical sciences, and my father, really since the age of 15, tried to force me to read and force my siblings to read a book a month. And that would be a variety of books. Because again, my father was very much of this tradition that you should learn from all sources of knowledge. And what I tried to do was have a different color sticker for each sefer in the Chumash. That whenever I came across a particular idea, whether it was a book on design, or whether it was a book on art, or whether it was a book on philosophy, or whatever it was, if I saw an idea expressed, or a nice quote, a cute quote, or a relevant quote, that reflected or kind of brought to light in more contemporary language a Torah idea from one of the Pesukim in the Chumash, I would put that color. So, I had pink for Shemot, yellow for Bereshit, etc., etc. And after a while, it was during COVID really, that I realized, look, I've got all these color-coded, notes in my books, in a variety of books. What if I actually sat down during COVID and realized, maybe I should put these together and collect these different quotes and put together some kind of clear-cut essays that address some ideas and concepts that could be of benefit to people in their avodah. And that was kind of my methodology. There might be a version 2 of Bereshit and Shemot, because there's a lot of quotes and ideas that I didn't include. But that was essentially my methodology. First, having a good grounding in Torah from the education that I had, thanks to my parents and the rabbis when I was younger, and then going into the world of, Radak in Sefer Hakdamat Sefer Yoshua talks about how Torah should be the lens essentially through which you see worldly wisdoms. So it was first Torah and then worldly wisdoms, and then use those color-coded stickers to try and bring it back again to the Torah. And we're left with this book.
Who is this book meant for?
I think at its most fundamental level, if you're someone who wants to understand key concepts, key ideas of Torah that are brought out through the Pesukim and the narratives within Sefer Shemot, then this book is for you. At a deeper level, if you're someone who understands the importance and necessity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our lives through Torah, Mitzvot, but at the same time, may have been raised in an educational environment that, for all intents and purposes, requires of you to hang your cloak of reality and intellect at the door when you partake of Jewish thoughts and practice, and are left feeling a bit unfulfilled as a result of that, then this book is also for you. And if, you are those who think that, the integration of Torah and worldly knowledge is some modern, new age, bediavad apologetic, then this book is definitely also for you. I really try to hone in on the idea that, many of the Hachamim held that Tselem Elokim, that image that we share with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if one could say such a thing, is the intellect. So we need to use it. It's not a nice little, aspect. It is that which distinguishes us from other mammals. So I think that the book is trying to, present that. And if that's something that you definitely see as being of benefit to you and your avodah, then I think humbly, that this book is for you.
So I'll link the book in the show's notes. It's available on Amazon. I'll link Bereshis and Shemos, even though we're publishing this about Shemos when the Shemos is starting. So that's when the podcast is coming out. So just one final question for you, Sina. Any plans, Vayikra Bamidbar or Dvarim?
Vayikra is halfway done. Baruch Hashem, I've still got another half to go. Ultimately, I would love to finish the whole, the series. There's a lot of books working on with Dart Press, but ultimately I need to finish the series, and with God's help and with your help, Nachi, I need some good sources from you. Then we can do it.
Okay. Thank you, Sina, for joining me, and thank you everyone for listening to this episode of Small Talk.
Thank you so much.